That's fine. Welcome back, y'all. Like I said, technical difficulty. This what it is. We figured out, we adapt, we overcome. We got the doctor back in here, and we're gonna be continue. We talking about chapter 3 of her book. So definitely let's get back into your quote that you wrote, and that resonated with definitely with me. So how you said, we want to lead with reason, but we often react from wounds.
Yeah, and what I was referring is that it doesn't matter if it's work related or in personal relationships. We all have baggage, and we carry those experiences and those wounds, if there's any. We carry them to our next job, to our next relationship. So that's what I was talking about. Have you ever heard the expression "toxic leaders create toxic leaders"?
Yes, 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 yes.
Maybe I could have the worst supervisor, and then suddenly I don't realize that I start pretty much doing it, participating in some of the same behaviors that I criticize from my supervisor. And now I'm doing to my team the same thing that I criticize somebody else from doing. So that's what I was referring to, that we tend to carry our baggage and our trauma and our experiences, good or bad, into our next relationship, our next work center, our next interactions.
Right. And so when I almost got the whole chapter 3 highlighted, like every key point I took down, I like, oh man, this is another good quote. Like the other one you say is like, we don't lose control at crisis. We reveal where we never had it. Like I'm telling you, I highlighted these, like I said, chapter 3 hit so hard for me. I went through it like with a fine-tooth comb, because I like, wow. I said, this is exactly, what I experienced. So this, like you said, like I didn't even know I was doing some of these things, which, once you're as a up and coming leader, you don't know what you don't know, right? If your leader is showing you these things and you think it's okay, so you start, like when a young child is, right, they mock their parents, or they repeat what they see on TV, or they repeat, what their friends do, because they look, they see, they do. As a up and coming leader, you look, you see, you do. Until somebody like, hey, that's not the right way. But that's what you put down. He's like, we don't lose control of crisis. We reveal where we never had it.
And one of the things that as I was talking to people, one of the things that resonated with me is that people are not expecting leaders to be perfect. They just want someone to be present, somebody that they can trust, somebody
Right.
that is competent and take care of their people. And they're watching you. Your team is always watching you. They're waiting to see how you react in a time of crisis. And I always used to, when I teach a class and I talk about leadership skills, I always say, what happens if your house is on fire and you call the 911 operator, and the 911 operator starts screaming and running and saying, oh my God, what are you doing in there?
In pandemonium, chaos. Yes.
Exactly. So I'm really looking for that person. In this case, that 911 operator will be that leader. And I'm looking for that person to remain calm and to give me guidance. And you're not always going to you're not always going to make perfect decisions, but you're still going to do your very best to guide your team and protect them and inspire them and motivate them to get the job done. But there's a lot of behaviors that as you go through that chapter, I talked about insecurity and insecurity. One of the things I talk, if you notice, as you go into each topic, I will tell you, listen, we all have it. We all
Yes.
insecure one way or another.
No one's safe. No one's everybody has it. Yeah. You just don't know you have it, but you have it. Yes. If you sit down and think about it, like, wow. Yes.
Yes, but it's like when you take it, when it's too much, when you have taken it too far, when you're so insecure that now your team becomes your enemy, your competition. You no longer want your team to succeed because they're going to look better than you. That your insecurities are taking over and are sabotaging your ability to lead that team. And I talk about narcissism and dominance, control. I remember this time that there was one time. Usually, we give feedback to our employees and to our people, but very seldom we ask for feedback to say, "Hey, now is your turn. Give me feedback." And I remember I wanted to be deliberate about doing that. And I had these three tech sergeants, three E6 under me. And I remember I sat down individually and I said, hey, I gave you some feedback and I would like to get feedback on how do you think I'm doing? Is there anything that you need from me that I'm not giving you and so on? But keep in mind, I'm thinking I'm an amazing leader.
Right.
They're gonna say nothing is wrong because I'm just great. And I just had that confidence. And the first one said, hey, it was you're great. The second one, you're great and everything is good. When I got to the third one, and she said, well, you might have good intentions, but you could be a micromanager. And sometimes that doesn't give us the ability to even mistake or try something new, because you're always there. If you feel that we're not 100% capable of doing it perfectly, you'll do it yourself. And that is hindering our ability to develop as
Hmm.
leaders. In my mind, I'm thinking, she's wrong. There's no way she's talking about me. But I'm trying to be receptive and listen. But when I got home, I started reflecting on it, and I say, she's right. She's right. I didn't think about it. But why do I have a problem delegating? Why do I have a problem empowering people? And I realized that if the fear came from because they were not trained, then I needed to stop what I was doing and I needed to train them. And if I wanted things a certain way, then I needed to stop and tell them what my preferences were. But I wasn't doing that. I was just like, oh, I do it. I'll do it. I'll do it. And and I didn't know that I was coming across as a micromanager. And again, even my intentions were good. It doesn't matter. The impact was still hindering their ability to grow. And I wasn't perfect the next day after I accepted the feedback, but I
Hmm.
was aware. And now I started working on letting go a little bit at a time. But we all have some of these things that I talk about: victim mentality, thinking that everybody's against you. When
Right.
your people are complaining about you, and you're like, they're just against me no matter what. Well, no, sometimes they might be a little bit against you, but you're doing something wrong. It
Right.
it takes a lot of reflection, and something that we're not really good at it is about auditing our own leadership approach. Sitting down and saying, let me review, the job I'm doing, and how am I doing? And
Right.
and then those are the things that I kind of break down. And again, these are things that I didn't come up with. I had my own opinions and perceptions, but I didn't want the book to be about my story or any experience I
Right.
had.
It's a collection. So it's a
Yeah,
collection of other leaders and stuff. And one of the things I did write down as well is like in the book is triggers are not problems. Avoiding them is. Like when it's like, oh, that triggers me, like, okay, well, the way I took it is like you have to address the core, right? Like what is what core at the core? What's going on? Why is that person acting like this? Or why are you receiving it like that? Where is it? Where does it affect at the core? So when it was triggers are not the problem, avoiding them is. That's how it kind of reverted back for me. Like address the core. Like don't just talk about the symptom, right? Like don't talk about the action. What's the or the reaction? What's the action for that reaction to occur?
because triggers, when you're able to identify your triggers, you're able. It's not about that you're going to avoid them, or you're just going to smile through it and not
Mhm.
address them or anything like that. What it means is, like, now I understand what my triggers are, and I'm able to, that self-awareness would allow me to
Right.
self-regulate my behavior. If my supervisor is doing something that always triggers me, now because I'm aware that's a trigger, let me self-regulate my behavior. Let me not respond right now, because I'm going to say something that now I'm contributing to that dysfunctional workplace, because I'm
Right.
doing to my leader just as he's doing or she's doing to me. So just kind of, waiting for a second, pause, think about what you're going to say,
Mm.
breather if you need to, and have conversations. That is the easiest way to address the problem. And I know that sometimes you're going to have a conversation and suddenly the leader is mad, or the subordinate is going to get upset, and now they're not going
Mm.
to talk to each other. I know those things are going to happen, but communication is key. You have to be able to discuss some of the things. I had a supervisor, he wasn't a bad
Mhm.
supervisor, but he used to hover over me, and I hated it. And I'm not really big. And we're not big with space.
Right, right.
We're fine, hugging people and just being, but it was just so uncomfortable for me that every time we were working on a project, he was hovering over me and I couldn't focus. I couldn't concentrate. Something so simple. So I had to address it. And I said, can I ask you something? I don't want you to be offended. I'm not trying to be oversensitive, but it's like I can't work when you're hovering over me. If you want to sit down, we can discuss it. But just standing there, breathing over my neck, it just makes me like I start thinking about it, and now I'm making more mistakes, or I
Right,
really focus on what I'm doing. So, and again, that's just a simple example, but there's a lot of triggers out there. It could be the way a person talks to you. That sometimes when a supervisor talks to you, you feel belittled. Well, address that
right,
behavior. Is it something that you're taking it wrong? Is it something that it's a cultural thing? Maybe that person uses certain language because that was normal to them. And I think communication is going to bridge that gap, and a lot of times it's going to resolve the problem, but we fail to communicate. A lot of times we're just going to battle it in and not say anything about it, and it just makes it worse.
right. And that goes right into that inner storm, right? Like what happens when leadership gets hijacked from within?
Yeah.
Like that's where you roll into chapter 4 of the book. Is man, that's so powerful right there.
Yeah, because when in chapter 4 I move into toxic leaders don't thrive alone, because
Right,
we can always blame somebody. We can always say this person doesn't have the skills, this person doesn't have this, doesn't have that. But in order for them to thrive in being an ineffective, destructive, toxic, whatever you want to call it, right,
mhm,
leader in your organization, sometimes there's things in the organization that are supporting that behavior.
right,
And I was just thinking about, my youngest daughter. She's never gets in trouble. She's very good. Do I overlook sometimes when she displays that behavior? Absolutely.
right.
Because
she's
think
she's
about
delivering,
she
right?
is
Yeah.
so good. She
Right.
never breaks curfew. She always answers the phone when I'm calling her. She's not disrespectful. So now I'm kind of thinking about all this. I'm overlooking the bad
Right.
behavior when she does, because she does so many great things. And a lot of times we might see somebody that is a top performer. They might be doing some things that are really destroying the workplace, and really disrupting the job satisfaction and productivity and all those things. And we don't address them because they're also our top performer. Oh, the numbers are
Right.
good. There's,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah, quarterly awards. They,
warning
they,
wars.
the first in, the last to leave, first to come to work, last to leave, always there.
And
But what else are they not doing? It's like that. I call it the when you had the 3 card money. Like okay, like you got to keep your eyes focused, right?
yeah, and sometimes we give people a pass, but do we give everybody a pass, right? We wanna be
No,
consistent. We wanna be
right,
consistent. And in toxic leadership, the why organizations create sometimes factors or systems that support toxic leadership. It's not done on purpose.
mm,
It's just sometimes it's like maybe we're overlooking, the way we treat people when they come forward with allegations. Maybe we blame the person. Maybe we
right,
say, this person had got in trouble 3 times. Why am I going to listen to them? And so there's a lot of different factors. The way people are promoted, the way we hold people accountable. Uh, is
right,
this in a work environment that is high pressure, fast paced? All those things are going to contribute to maybe creating that toxic leader that we're talking about. So I just wanted to say, yes, leaders could do better, but sometimes organizations can also improve the culture, improve the way they run the organization, so this doesn't happen.
mm, right. And that's where we move into chapter 5 because we discussed a little bit earlier. And that's chapter 5. It's like the pivotal point to where you share lived experience from inside the storm. Like for our listeners out there living through the storm right now, what's one of your message to them to like I was told by one of my good mentors, he's like, man, if you stop in the storm, you're gonna continue to get rained on. So keep moving. Right. Eventually the storm is gonna pass, right? But if you keep moving, it's gonna pass a little bit faster, right? So it's like, so I'm a visual person. So I like, man, that makes sense to me because here in Texas, like you could drive and it's probably like that in Florida too, right? You
Yeah.
could drive for 15 minutes, it's not raining, and then 10 minutes down the road is like it's pouring down, but then you cross, you can see the actual where it stops raining at, right? But if you stop your car right there and continue pouring and raining, of course you're gonna still get wet. But if you keep driving through the storm, so um that chapter
However,
5,
are you
right?
still, even though you know you're gonna keep driving forward and get off the rain, does that mean that you
Mm,
turn on the wipers? You're still gonna turn.
mm,
So
right.
that doesn't mean that, hey, I see the light at the end of the tunnel, so let me just suffer, let me just suck it, suck it up and just drive through this. No, I still can turn on the wipers. Maybe I can slow down a little bit because I don't want to get into an accident. So there's still things that you can do to safeguard, right, your mental health.
Mm,
And I was terrible at setting boundaries for my supervisor. I'm like, that's my supervisor. They tell me what to do and I do it. But there's nothing wrong with setting
wow.
boundaries and saying, man, like every time I'm off, you send me 20 messages, 20 texts, and you call me in every time I have a day off. Like, you were in security forces. Imagine, right,
Yes.
when you're finally off after working the long hours, but they
You
call
get called
you
back
for training.
in, remount. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes. Yes.
Something happens 6 times in a row. On your day off, you get called back because that happened to be a training day. So it gets to a point that gently,
Yes.
respectfully, you might want to say, I need to talk about these boundaries. Let me talk to my supervision and say, hey, I really want to be a team player. I really benefit from this training. But training has always been set up on my day off. And now, how can we compromise here so I can give you my very best? But if I can
Wow.
get no sleep, how can I give you my very best if I'm always
Right.
being, and now with technology,
Man.
you never disconnect from work. There's always a text, there's always an email, there's always a phone call, and you're
Right.
never fully disconnected.
Right. Right.
Eh,
So for our listeners out there, I don't know if you kind of heard the nuggets that the doc just dropped for us, right? And for me too. Like she said, okay, you driving through the storm. Don't forget, you got your headlights, you
mhm,
got your wiper blades. You know what I'm saying? Like you got things, tools to help you see through the storm.
mhm,
See, for me, for a long time, Doc, I'm gonna tell you, and I share it with people now because I shared with you my mental health struggles. Right, a lot of times I was driving without the headlights. I was driving without the wipers on. It was just raining and pouring, and I'm like, well, hopefully I drive straight and there's no curve or there's no bumps or there's. But no, I kept hitting the curb. But you know what I'm saying? Like oncoming traffic, like people swerving out of my way because I'm just driving in the storm without no headlights, without no wiper blades on. And you just reminded me, and that's why I said this book right here, Broken Ranks, like it's more than the title, people. It's more than the title. So I just want you to understand what she meant by when you're driving through the storm, it's okay to use, and this is what I took from it,
mhm.
to use your headlights, to use your wiper blades. Maybe you have to turn on the hazards. When it's raining real hard, you got to turn on your hazards so people can see you in front and back to know that it's caution.
Absolutely. Yes. And we tend to, again, being in that culture of, get it together, be resilient, suck it up, everything, it will pass. Eventually you will move, or, that person will leave the job, or you always thinking something will happen where this will stop. But what happens the 3 years that you're still in that situation? And I think when we get
Right.
that mentality that I'm just going to be so resilient, but resiliency also means seeking help. There's
Mm,
nothing wrong with seeking help. Either you go to a professional and seek help to be able to process what you're going through, or get a support system. It could be a family member, it could be a friend. Sometimes it could be somebody from another organization, because I don't want to gossip within my work center and now suddenly everybody knows I'm talking about the boss, or something like that. But you want to be able to process what you're going through. I'm not really good at journaling, and that's something that I have a friend of mine that she does it.
mm,
Tells me how much it helps her because she's able to process her feelings or what she went through and her thoughts as she's writing it. And that's something I got to be more deliberate about doing that. Uh,
mhm,
something, and again, I talked about setting boundaries, making sure that you said, "Hey, I'm going to give you 100%, but can I just have dinner with my family without getting 7 texts? Can I can I really just have
right.
this one day that I need to decompress?" And a lot of times we feel that when we're respectful or empathetic or anything like that, that for some reason we're not holding people accountable. I remember having people that had problems with their children and they needed to go home early and so on. I didn't throw their workload to another worker that didn't have kids. I said, we're going to figure something out. I'm going to be
Right.
empathetic. I'm going to give you the opportunity to take care of your child and to do what you have to do. But when can we make up this time? When we come Saturday, can you work after hours? Can you take this laptop and get this done? We still can hold people accountable, but we still can help them deal with whatever their challenges are. And you can have a top performer and that person can still come one day and be struggling. And the one thing they need from you is like, how are you doing? Instead of like, here's more work, suck it up.
Yes. The invisible wounds you talk about in chapter 6, and that lines perfectly with, what you put in it. You said wounds you cannot see often, the ones that bleed the longest. What's the scoop on that? Because I share with you, my invisible wounds. People like invisible wound, like, yes, there's a lot of stuff that goes on between these two openings right here, these ears, right between these two ears,
Mhm.
that battlefield of the brain, the invisible wounds. And man, what you said wounds you can't see are often the ones that bleed the longest.
Because there's so many invisible wounds and I can use an example of those people that park in the and handicap, right?
Hmm.
And a lot of times we see somebody that comes out of there and they're walking perfectly fine and they don't have a wheelchair, they don't have crutches, and automatically we're giving them a dirty look or we're thinking, why are they parking there? There's so many things that you're not able to see, and actually there's a lot of people that are dealing with challenges and they still have a smile and they still kind and they still optimistic, and you're like, "They cannot be possibly anything wrong with you," but in reality, inside, they're falling apart, and one of the things
Yeah.
that I wanted to use the reason I wanted to say, invisible wounds, the psychological battlefield, is because anytime we're talking about military members, active duty or veterans, we think about wounds, about somebody missing a limb or somebody having
Right.
where is that visible wound, and you feel that those wounds only happen in foreign soil in a battlefield, right? That
Right.
people went to war and they came with these injuries. But what happens when your battlefield is at your work center? It's in your cubicle behind your desk. What is it that you're going through that we don't know about?
Yes.
And you still suffering through it and you stay quiet because nobody noticed, nobody asked you how you're doing. So you still pushing through it. You pushing, it's like you're really pushing through it without the wipers, without the headlights, without none of that. But the problem is that sometimes you don't get to the spot where the rain stops and it has continue on.
Yeah.
There's nothing
Um.
wrong with experiencing stress. It's when you don't have a break and it's consistent that is going to
Right.
mess your ability, your mental ability.
And I'm glad you said that, Doc, because so I'm an Air Force wounded warrior, and I go out and I go when they reach out to me to go speak at events for them for the Air Force. And usually they start off with like, hey, if I was to tell you a wounded warrior is gonna come up here, what would people think a wounded warrior is? You have people raising their hand, oh, missing leg, missing arm, and then they go on to say, well, what happened if I tell you a wounded warrior standing right in front of you? And then they point to me, right? So I come up there walking with my smile on and everything like this. But you hit the nail on the head when you say that. It's like the invisible wounds, like what I'm dealing with on a daily, every day is a battle for
Mhm.
me.
Yeah.
Every day, but I choose not to lose because I came at that edge to where I wanted to lose,
Mhm.
right? Where I just like, you know what? It's
Yeah.
better that I transition to the next world, right? But it's like no, man, it's a reason why you here.
Yeah.
It's a reason, you're it's a reason. Your why are you here? So those are visible. And when I share my story,
Mhm.
they's like, wow, man, how do you keep a smile on your face? How do you and what I tell them, the reason why I keep a smile on my face, I said, because there's somebody out there that's going through something similar or probably even worse. And they say, wow, if he's still up here, I could do it too. And I
Yeah.
tell myself, just make it to tomorrow. Every day I wake up,
Yeah.
Doc, I tell myself, make it to tomorrow. So that's
Yeah.
my push to myself. Make it to tomorrow. Cause I look, well, tomorrow will never come because once you get into tomorrow, guess what? It's today. Right. So my sense is, yo, make it till tomorrow. make it to tomorrow.
Mhm.
So when you put that in your book, Invisible Wounds, a Psychological Battlefield, I was like, man, you talk
Yeah,
about war scars. So I appreciate you even putting that in the book and just finding the information and other individual that was willing to share their story and journey so you could put it in there as well.
yeah. And one of the things when I started, when you do research, it took me about a year to do this, to finish this research. And one of the things I wanted to talk about toxic leadership, and and a lot of the things that I found is that the research led to how does it impact job satisfaction, productivity, turnover, and things like that. And there was not a lot about how does it impact mental health. So then when I started looking, changing my search, and I said, okay, let me look armed forces and mental health. Everything I found is people that are actually have gone to war, and what are some of those wounds, and it was not really addressing what happens if you happens to be in satellites and you never deploy, you never went to war, your war is really at your desk, but you still went through something that we don't know about. You went through an experience where somebody was really making
Right.
it very difficult. And how long were you there? Some people have, I was lucky enough, and I really enjoy it. I move every 3 max 4 years, but there's people that have talked to that have been 7 years in the same assignment, and
Wow.
then the a lot of times under the same supervision. And what happens when you have to endure 6 years, 7 years with the same environment? It just becomes to a point that you are depleted and you no longer have the tools necessary to safeguard your mental health. And your mind, well, your mouth is saying that you do. After I just heard it online the other day. They said, "What is the biggest lie you ever told?" And the person said, "I'm alright. I'm alright."
Yes,
And
that's so true.
I'm like, "Oh, wow." So many times we say, "I'm doing fine. I'm alright. Do you need anything?" "No, I'm good."
No, I'm good. I'm cool. Yep.
But inside, we are hurting, and that's what I got out of all the interviews. And it was interesting because the 3 things that came out of it when it comes to mental health, it was anxiety, burnout, and depression. And anxiety and burnout are still pretty people are still pretty comfortable using those terms and saying, "Oh, man, I was burnt out. Yeah, this is what I was experiencing. Oh, I had a lot of anxiety when I got
Mhm.
to the parking lot, when I opened the door of that office and I knew that person was there, I got this anxiety." But when it came to depression, you can almost see, I did this interviews via Zoom, and you can see how uncomfortable the majority of the people, the mood shifted, and are people still uncomfortable to say, "I think I was depressed, so I think I was going to depression." Or they say, "No, I was
Yeah.
depressed." But then I will say, "Can you describe what you were feeling?" And they will say, I felt hopeless. I was completely detached. I had nothing else to give to the people at work or at home." And they describe what depression looks like, but they will still
Mhm.
say, "I'm not depressed." And I believe I have the number over here. It was 10 out of 16 people then through the interview said they
Wow.
suffered depression because of their leadership and the situations they were going through. So
Wow.
I thought that was a big number, 10 out of 16, have experienced. But still that stigma and that shame that comes with saying I was depressed, it still surprises me that it's almost like you feel that we're making a dent, but sometimes we're not. We're still in the same
Yeah.
spot. And that goes for veterans to be able
Yeah.
to come forward and ask for help.
Yeah. You talk about chapter 7, turning the page from harm to healing. So for me, like, and I was just saying, like, man, what's a good question I could ask you? Because it's like once I started getting to chapter 6 and chapter 7, like it started to I started to replay. Like, I'm grateful that I had great leadership to help me in my transition when I was struggling. Like you said, a lot of people don't have that leadership to walk them through, to be there for them in their time of need. I had that, and I'm so grateful for that because I was lost, but they made sure that I was taken care of. And when I share my story with some people, and when I go out to go speak at events, they kind of like, man, I didn't have leadership like that. So my response to them is like, okay, so now you're in this position. Now you're in a leadership position. So make sure, just like make sure that you do what you didn't have. You see what I'm saying? So it's like you could change it, right? So When does healing actually begin? After discharge or during the storm? And I told myself healing began when I finally accepted it. Right? Like when I accepted it was time for me to transition. When I accepted that I could no longer stay in the service, when I accepted that I had to get help. And that's what you put in your book, Broken Ranks, is like some of these things you have to accept. Like I had to accept who I was at the time so I could get help, so I could be better in the long run.
Yeah. But one key thing that you said is like, for me, being able to heal, it was when I accepted, right? So that's right.
Mhm.
Healing, it looks different for everybody else.
Right.
It's
Exactly.
like saying what success means for you. Maybe it's to, be able to create a business. But maybe for me, it was creating a business. Maybe for you, it's like, no, had 3 years of great profit.
Right.
Success. So success and healing looks different for everybody else. No different than transitioning from, the
Exactly.
military to outside. We need to stop comparing ourselves with anybody else because our transition is going to be different. Our healing is going to be different. So there is 8 steps in that chapter, but those
Mhm.
steps don't apply to every situation. Those steps don't necessarily go in that order. But it's steps for what happens if I'm the person in charge of this organization and they bring those allegations to me. What are some of the things
Right.
that I can do? What happens if I'm the leader? Maybe I need to step back and do some reflection and really uh, you know take accountability for what I'm doing. But a lot of the things in this chapter is really, as an organization, what are some of the things that we can do? Because accountability comes in so many different forms. And you did our
Mhm.
LP, so you know that accountability
Yeah.
is not necessarily punishment. Everybody thinks, oh, well, you punish them. You give them some paperwork. No, accountability can look, like coaching, mentorship.
Yes.
Mm,
Yes.
you don't have.
Everybody has their different ways to accept it and deal with it.
There's so many
Yes.
things that you can do, and the first thing that I tell other leaders to do, somebody brings this allegation to you, you want to look at the climate of the organization. Have you assessed the
Mhm.
organization? Have you looked at those surveys that everybody talks about and nobody
Right.
reads? People right, a lot of people go back
Right. Yeah.
because they're like, do they ever do anything with the surveys? Well, a survey is a great place to start and say, I
Right.
get a lot of complaints. I remember seeing workplaces where there were 6 people going to mental health. And I'm like, that's a red
Right.
flag for me. I said, what's going on? And
Right.
so there's so many things that will tell you, not necessarily, black and white evidence of what the person is doing, but it will tell you some of the things that are happening within that organization, within that work center, that can lead you to understand, okay, why is this work center this way? Why are people hurting? Why are people not motivated? Why are they don't trust each other? They don't trust leadership. And there's a lot of things that can be done before you even think about removal or just firing somebody. You just want to make sure that you exhaust all your ways, and sometimes training, communication, and telling somebody what they're doing. One thing I always tell leaders is like, the higher you go in rank and position, the less
Mhm.
people are going to be outside your door to give you real, meaningful feedback.
Yes.
Suddenly, if you're
Yes.
not careful, people believe
That's
you're
true.
amazing because nobody's complaining about you. But that doesn't mean that you're amazing. It just means that there's less people that have the courage to tell you that you're not that great. You're good on Mondays, but on Tuesday you're terrible. And let me tell you why. So we have to, when we have, when I made chief, when you get to that rank, you're not gonna have
Mhm.
an. I wasn't gonna have an airman walk to me and say, "Hey, chief, this is where you're falling short." Sometimes you
Right,
have to
right.
give that feedback. You have to go and say, "Hey, what are some of the things that I could be doing better?" And then be able to be receptive and listen. That doesn't mean they're always going to be right. Sometimes you are making decisions that they don't know the reason you're making those decisions. But again, that's another reason. Sometimes we don't explain anything because I said so. You got to do it. But sometimes it's okay to explain. This is not that
Right.
serious. It's not top secret. I can explain why I made this decision, and suddenly everybody is on board. Now I got the buy-in from my team. Um,
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's how you wrapped up the book, and we're gonna wrap up this conversation with chapter 8, right? The final charge.
Yes.
You shared that you got to the highest level, right? You can't get there's no E10, right? There's no E10 in the Air Force, like you're at E9, like. And this is a perfect way to wrap up the book, to wrap up the conversation. You put the final charge to those who lead and to those who follow. You
Yeah, I
I,
want
I,
yeah.
yeah, explain, like, what's the scoop on that? Like for you to end close the book with that chapter.
I wanted to speak I wanted to speak directly to leaders that have lost
Mhm.
their way and suddenly you're struggling with your team and you don't understand why. So I wanted to talk to them, and actually it's an open letter in the book. It's one of the things that
Yes.
there is an open letter to leaders, and I said if something resonated with you when you were reading this book, it's not for you to be embarrassed or to be ashamed, but it's to saying, okay, maybe I've been participating in some of these behaviors.
Mhm.
And it's never too late. That's one of the things that I wanted to make sure that it was clear. It is never too late to hit that reset button and say, you know what, I could do better. I can gain
Right.
the trust of my team. I can behave differently. Maybe I need some training. Maybe I need some real feedback. Maybe I need to take a break because I'm exhausted. And now because I'm exhausted, I'm making my team. I'm demanding things of my team that are just not being realistic. So so it's just to do to make sure that I was talking to that leader, so it didn't feel that this is about pointing the fingers, but
Mhm.
there's something that you can still do about it. It's like my mom went back to college at 40 years old, and she always told me, "You're never too late to get an education." I went at 40 years old and got my degree. So it's never too late for leadership. You just want to make sure you want to first have the willingness to do the right thing and to take care of your people and to be successful. Make sure that the organization is successful, and you can always go back. And then I talk to the followers and say, "How about if
Mhm.
you're struggling mentally,
Yes.
everything, you have trauma, you're going through a lot of stuff, you have a pretty big baggage. What are some of the things that you can do?" And I even provide contact information if they need to contact somebody if they're struggling with mental health. Because keep in mind, to close the right, the when it comes to the interviews, these people were veterans, so they're already out of
Mhm.
the military.
Right.
Just if I twist my ankle 10 times in the military doing, PT, that doesn't mean that when I become a veteran, it doesn't hurt anymore. On the contrary, it
Right.
hurt even more. So they still carry some of these things. I had two other people that I interviewed that still continue to get mental health therapy and go on to see a professional based on their experience in the military. So this is going to carry over. So I was talking to them, and there's a lot of checklists and toolkits, and I
Yes.
can read you all the stuff, but there's a lot of things I wanted to make sure that I leave you with tools. What can I do? What can I implement?
No, this I'm holding up the book while you talk about it, because this is fire, because they taking screenshots right now, so I'm just putting it up here while you talk about it.
No, so the yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I personally hate going to a class or reading a book that it gave me a problem, but it didn't give me any solutions. And again, taking you, either I can write about leadership or I can take you through a leadership experience. And even if it's what some people consider a negative experience, we learn from it. We have to be able
Yes.
to name a problem and discuss a problem if we want to be better and solve it. And by staying away from it, say, no, let's not talk about that, or let's not label nobody this, and it's okay, but let's have real conversations about it. Because again, for every 20 amazing leaders I had, I did have one or two that I was like, how did that person get promoted? How did they put 150 people under them? Because they just
Right.
have the skills to do it. And unfortunately, it impacts people's mental
So
health.
how can they get in contact with you? How can they get the book? How can they reach out to RLK Team Solutions so y'all could come in and speak to their leadership or to their company or organization? How can they connect with the doc?
Okay. There, I'm gonna send you over links so later on you can put them in your in your page. But they can contact me through Leenette.Joseph at RLK Team Solutions, or they can go into our website. We have a little screen that you can actually send a message to us directly from our website. Is www.rlk-teamsolutions. And from there we can talk, we can discuss. I like talking to people. You don't even have even if you don't need our services, we can, you know what, you said this and I want to talk about it some more. I'm open to that. And the book is available on Amazon. It's available right now in electronic book and that the hardcover, the paperback, I'm sorry, but it's going to be very soon, probably in the next 15 days, is going to be an audiobook also. I learned something through this process that 40% of the people consume books via audio tape because everybody's so busy. So I decided I found somebody great and he's working on my book.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Leenette. I appreciate you. And remember, so everybody out there, you don't have to drown in the sea of transition. Grab that VET S.O.S lifeline. We're here to help. Team RLK Team Solutions is here to help.
Yes.
King Scott is here to help. VET S.O.S is here to help. And everybody, please put something in the chat that's here to help. Please like, please subscribe, please reach out. Until next time, we see y'all later. Peace.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Take care.